They shoved her. Hard. The sound of laughter filled the hallway, phones snapping up like vultures circling over fresh prey, books scattered across the floor, papers spinning through the air before falling in slow motion. And in the middle of it all, a girl stood still, her face calm, her eyes steady, her silence louder than the laughter around her. "Welcome to Crestwood High," the boy sneered. His name was Chad Whitman, and he ruled these halls like he owned them. Maybe he thought he did. His father sat on the school board, his picture hung in the trophy case, and his last name opened every door. The new girl didn't have a name anyone remembered, at least not yet. To them, she was just another transfer, quiet, black, out of place in a school that smiled in the brochures but whispered behind lockers. She knelt down slowly, gathering her books one by one. No tears, no words, no anger, just calm. Too calm. And maybe that's what bothered him most, because Chad was used to power, the kind that comes from fear. He liked watching people flinch when he raised his voice. But this girl didn't flinch. She looked at him once, briefly. Not a glare, not a threat, just measured. Like she was doing math in her head, and he was the equation that didn't add up. Then she walked away. Right through the laughter, through the stares, through the cheap insults that followed her, and in that moment, no one realized what they had just done. They thought they'd embarrassed her. But what they really did was wake her up, because Amara Johnson wasn't just any new girl. She wasn't someone who ran from problems. She was someone who trained for them. And in less than 24 hours, the whole school would know exactly who they were messing with. Her name was Amara Johnson. 17 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. When her mom got a job in a small Colorado suburb, Amara didn't argue. She knew her mother needed a fresh start as much as she did. A new town, a new school, and maybe a chance to finally breathe. But moving never meant escaping. She'd been the new girl before. She'd heard the whispers, the fake smiles, the questions that weren't really questions at all. "Where are you from? Is that your real hair? Wow, you speak so well." Amara had learned long ago that not every fight was worth throwing a punch for. Some required a different kind of strength, the quiet one that waits for the right moment. Each morning before school, she tied her hair back, laced her worn sneakers, and passed a small shelf in her room filled with trophies. Gold, silver, bronze, each one engraved with dates and titles. State karate champion, regional defensive arts winner. But only one trophy mattered to her. The first one she ever won as a child. Her dad had been there for that one. The next year he was gone, so Amara trained hard, not just to win, but to stay grounded. Karate was her discipline, her anchor, her way of keeping control when the world tried to take it away. At Crestwood High, nobody knew any of that. They only saw a quiet black girl who didn't fit in with the designer shoes and trust fund smiles. She didn't care about popularity. She just wanted to survive the semester. But life has a way of testing the people who think they just want peace. And soon, Crestwood was going to learn that peace isn't the same as weakness. Crestwood High was the kind of school that looked good on brochures. Polished floors, clean lockers, smiling students with bright futures. But behind those smiles was a hierarchy carved in stone. Money at the top, silence at the bottom, and no one understood that better than Chad Whitman. He was the captain of the football team, the principal's favorite, and the son of the man who funded half the school's renovations. He had a smile that looked good on posters and a temper that never made it to the disciplinary files. Wherever Chad went, Liam and Grace followed. Liam was the echo, loud, careless, always ready to laugh at someone else's pain. Grace was worse, the queen bee who could ruin someone's reputation with a single tweet and still call it a joke. They didn't see Amara as a person. They saw her as a target, different enough to mock, quiet enough to ignore, and strong enough that her silence felt like an insult. So they decided to teach her a lesson, not because she did anything wrong, but because they could. The worst part was how normal it seemed. The teachers looked away, the students recorded for likes, and the system let it slide. Crestwood was a place where the rich got reputation, and the rest got reminders to keep the peace. But peace wasn't coming this time. Something was about to shift. And Chad Whitman, for the first time in his perfect little life, was going to feel what fear really meant. It started the next morning. The hallways buzzed with noise, but somehow the moment Amara walked in, the energy changed. She could feel eyes on her, the kind that don't just look, they judge. She kept her head high and walked to her locker. Then she heard the voice behind her. Well, if it isn't the star of yesterday's show, Chad. He was leaning against the lockers with that same mocking smile, a half-empty energy drink in his hand, his entourage just a few steps behind. Amara didn't reply. She didn't even look at him. She just closed her locker and started to walk away. He stepped in front of her, tall, blocking her path. You too good to talk to me now? She spoke quietly but clearly. I don't talk to people who push others down to feel tall. Liam snorted. Grace rolled her eyes. Chad smirked. Oh, we've got a philosopher now. Then his hand moved, a light shove meant to humiliate. But Amara didn't fall this time. She pivoted slightly, absorbing the impact like she'd done it 1,000 times. Her books barely moved. She looked up at him, and steady, cold, and unbothered. That look unnerved him. The crowd that had gathered was waiting for a reaction, some tears, a plea, a scene. But Amara just said 3 words. Are you done? For a second, nobody spoke. Even the hallway seemed to hold its breath. Then she walked away again. No shout, no curse, no fight. Just control, and that control cut deeper than any insult could, because what Chad didn't understand was simple. He thrived on fear. And fear was something Amara had unlearned a long time ago. By the time the bell rang, the whole school was whispering about the new girl who didn't flinch. And Chad, for the first time, felt like he was the one being watched. By lunchtime, the story had spread through every corner of the school. Everyone knew about the new girl who didn't cry when Chad pushed her. Everyone wanted to see what she'd do next. Amara sat alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, quietly eating her sandwich and sketching in a notebook. It wasn't art. It was focus. Drawing calmed her mind, the same way training used to. Chad's table was alive with laughter, the kind that's more about ego than humor. Grace leaned over and whispered something that made him grin. Then he stood up, dragging his tray behind him. The room grew quieter as he crossed it. Liam followed, smirking. Grace strutted a step behind, ready for the show. Chad dropped his tray on Amara's table, the sound echoing like a challenge. Well, look who's too good to sit with the rest of us. Amara didn't lift her eyes. I'm just trying to eat. Eat? He laughed. You're lucky we even let you sit here. Grace giggled, loud and sharp. Liam leaned closer. You should smile more. Might make people like you. Amara set her pencil down and looked up. I don't need people like you to like me. Chad's grin faded a little, replaced by irritation. You think you're tough because you don't talk? Because you think you're better? I think, she said, calm and deliberate, that you don't know when to stop. The words hung in the air. Then she did something no one expected. She placed her phone on the table, screen down, camera quietly facing up. So, just to be clear, she said, her voice low but strong. You're threatening me, right? In front of everyone? Liam laughed nervously. What are you, a lawyer now? No, she said. Just someone who believes in evidence. Chad leaned closer, voice dripping with menace. You keep playing smart and I'll make sure you regret it. People like you never last here. Amara smiled faintly. We'll see. When she walked out of the cafeteria, her hands were steady, her breathing calm. Behind her, Chad laughed again, but it sounded different this time, forced. He didn't know that every word he'd said was already saved, backed up, and ready to expose him. That night, Amara stayed up late. Her room was quiet except for the hum of her laptop. She replayed the recording, marking the timestamps, noting every threat, every word. For most students, this would have been about revenge. For her, it was about proof. She started digging. Old-school news posts, deleted comments, whispers on social media. Patterns appeared. other students who had left Crestwood suddenly, stories that didn't add up. Then she found a thread from last year, a boy named Malik who had transferred out after behavioral issues. She read between the lines. Another student of color who'd spoken up and been silenced. Amara reached out to him through an old email address. Within an hour, a reply came, "You're not the first. But maybe you can be the last." That was all she needed. She organized her files into a secure drive labeled Evidence Crestwood High. Every video, every audio clip, every piece of truth ready to surface. The next morning, she stayed late after classes, mapping the school's hallways, noting where cameras were pointed and where they weren't. Some corners were conveniently blind, some footage conveniently missing. It wasn't incompetence. It was protection. By the time she got home, she knew exactly what she was dealing with. A school that looked the other way for the right last name. As she placed her phone on the charger, a text popped up from an unknown number. "Hope you've made your decision. Tomorrow's going to be fun." The sender's initial, C. Amara, read it twice, smiled, and took a screenshot. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Tomorrow was already planned, but not the way Chad thought. The next day began like any other, but there was tension in the air. That quiet hum before a storm. By third period, the whispers had started again. "Chad's gonna do something." "Yeah," he said, "today's the day." Amara walked the same hallway as before, calm, deliberate. Her phone rested in her pocket, recording. Chad stepped out from behind a group of lockers, Liam and Grace beside him. The same smirk, the same arrogance, but this time she wasn't alone. Students slowed, sensing what was coming. "Time's up, Amara," Chad said. "You had your fun. Now you're done." She tilted her head. "Done? Yeah," he said. "You don't belong here, and I'm gonna make sure everyone knows it." He reached out, grabbing her arm. The movement was fast, but hers was faster. A shift of weight. A twist of the wrist. In one clean motion, Chad was on the ground, staring up in shock. The hallway erupted in gasps and phone cameras. He scrambled to his feet, furious. "You're finished!" he shouted. "You just attacked me!" Amara didn't move. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pressed play. His own voice filled the hallway. Clear, sharp, undeniable. "You keep playing smart, and I'll make sure you regret it. People like you never last here." The crowd froze. Even Grace's smirk disappeared. Chad lunged for her phone, but another voice cut through the noise. The principal's. "What is going on here?" Amara turned, calm as ever. "Just truth," she said, handing him the phone. And then, another sound. The intercom crackled. The principal's own recorded voice played next, from the day before, promising Chad's father that this will be handled quietly. Gasps rippled through the hallway. Teachers emerged from classrooms. Cameras flashed. The principal stammered. Chad looked lost. Grace was pale. Amara spoke softly, but her words carried. "Silence protects bullies." "Not anymore." Within minutes, local authorities arrived, not by accident, but by Amara's quiet arrangement. Justice had been invited, and it showed up right on time. That evening, Crestwood High made the news. Footage of the confrontation spread faster than rumor ever could. The recordings, the threats, the cover-ups, all of it out in the open. By morning, the principal was suspended. Chad and his friends faced disciplinary hearings. The community that once stayed silent finally had something to say. Amara sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hand, the early light falling across her trophies. Her mother smiled from across the table. "You didn't have to fight," she said softly. Amara smiled back. "I did, Mom, just not the way they expected." Her phone buzzed, messages from students she barely knew. "Thank you. You made me believe again. I wish I'd been as brave as you." She scrolled through them slowly, then set the phone down and breathed. The next morning, she walked into school again. The same halls, the same marble floors. But this time, the silence wasn't fear. It was respect. And maybe that's what real strength is. Not shouting, Not hitting, but standing tall when the world tells you to bow. Amara didn't fight for revenge. She fought for respect. For every kid who's ever been told they don't belong. If you believe, no one should walk through those halls in fear. Hit that like button.comment justice if you stand with Amara and share this story because silence protects bullies, but truth protects everyone else.